The forest didn't care that Mira Hayes was barefoot. It didn't care that her white dress, the one Marcus had picked out, the one with the collar that buttoned too high, was now torn at the hem and stained with mud. The trees simply watched as she stumbled through the underbrush, her breath coming in ragged gasps that tore at her throat like claws. Run. Just run. Behind her, Marcus's voice echoed through the darkness, smooth and patient. Mira, sweetheart, you're being irrational. Come back to the car. We'll talk about this. Talk. He always wanted to talk. Usually with his hands around her wrists, his voice dropping to that dangerous whisper that made her stomach turn to ice. Not tonight. Tonight, when he'd pulled the car over on this abandoned mountain road, when she'd seen that look in his eyes, the one that said he was done pretending to be patient, something inside her had finally snapped. She'd grabbed the door handle before he could hit the locks, thrown herself into the night, and ran. Branches whipped at her face. Her feet screamed in protest, cut and bleeding. But fear was a better motivator than pain, and Marcus's footsteps were getting closer. You can't survive out here alone, he called, his tone shifting from patient to patronizing. There are things in these woods, Mira. Dangerous things. You need me. She needed him like she needed a knife to the throat. The moon hung full and bright above the canopy, casting silver shadows that made the forest feel alive. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled low and mournful, raising goosebumps along her arms. She'd heard the stories about these mountains, the warnings. But right now, she'd take her chances with wolves over the monster wearing Marcus's face. Her foot caught on a root, and she went down hard, palms slamming into the dirt. Pain shot through her ankle, sharp and immediate. When she tried to stand, her leg buckled. No, there you are. Marcus emerged from between the trees, his dress shirt still perfectly pressed, his jaw tight with barely controlled anger. In the moonlight, he looked almost handsome. That's what had fooled her in the beginning. The charm, the gifts, the way he'd made her feel seen after years of being invisible. She hadn't understood the price until it was too late. You made me chase you, he said softly, loosening his tie as he approached. Do you know how that makes me feel? After everything I've done for you? Mira scrambled backward, her injured ankle dragging uselessly. Stay away from me. Or what? He crouched down, reaching for her chin with fingers that had once felt gentle. Now they just felt like a cage. You'll scream? There's no one out here to hear you, sweetheart. That's why I chose this road. He'd chosen this, planned it. The realization made her stomach heave. His fingers closed around her jaw, forcing her to look at him. When we get home, we're going to have a long conversation about respect, about gratitude, about... The growl came from everywhere and nowhere at once. It started as a low rumble that Mira felt in her chest before she heard it. Marcus froze, his eyes darting to the darkness beyond the trees. The forest had gone silent. No crickets, no night birds. Even the wind seemed to be holding its breath. What the hell? Marcus started. The wolf stepped into the moonlight, and Mira's heart stopped. It was massive, larger than any wolf should be, with fur so dark it seemed to absorb the shadows around it. But it was the eyes that made her forget how to breathe amber and burning, with an intelligence that was distinctly, impossibly aware. Those eyes weren't looking at her. They were locked on Marcus. Jesus Christ. Marcus breathed, stumbling backward. His hand released her face as he reached for his pocket for the knife he always carried, the one he'd shown her once as a warning. Nice doggy. Easy. The wolf's lips pulled back, revealing teeth that gleamed like ivory daggers. The growl deepened, and this close, Mira could feel the vibration of it in her bones. Marcus pulled out the knife. I'll kill it. Stay behind me. For once, Mira didn't move, because something strange was happening. The wolf had positioned itself between her and Marcus, its massive body a wall of muscle and barely restrained violence. It wasn't threatening her. It was protecting her. Marcus, she whispered, her voice shaking. Don't. But Marcus had never been good at listening. He lunged forward with the knife, and the wolf moved like liquid darkness faster than anything that size should move. There was a flash of teeth, a sickening crunch, and Marcus's scream echoed through the trees. The knife clattered to the ground. Marcus clutched his arm, blood seeping between his fingers, his face twisted in shock and rage. You bitch, you sicked it on me. The wolf took a step forward, and Marcus finally found his survival instinct. He turned and ran, crashing through the underbrush like a wounded animal, his curses fading into the distance. Then it was just Mira and the wolf. And the silence. She should run. Every rational part of her brain screamed at her to move. To follow Marcus back to the road. To put distance between herself and this creature. But her ankle throbbed. Her body was shaking with exhaustion and shock. And when those amber eyes turned to her, they were gentle. The wolf approached slowly, each step deliberate, giving her time to react. But Mira found she couldn't move, couldn't think. She just watched as it came close enough for her to see the silver markings in its dark fur, close enough for her to feel the heat radiating from its body. It lowered its massive head, and for one impossible moment, those intelligent eyes met hers with something that looked almost like recognition. Then it turned and melted back into the shadows, leaving her alone in the moonlight with nothing but questions and the feeling that her entire world had just shifted on its axis. Somewhere in the darkness, a branch snapped, and a man's voice, low and rough as gravel, spoke from the trees. "You're safe now, little one." Mira's breath caught in her throat. The voice had come from the shadows to her left, masculine, dark, and threaded with an accent she couldn't quite place. Not the wolf. A man. Which meant she wasn't alone out here. And somehow that felt more dangerous than facing the creature that had just saved her life. "Who's there?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended, broken at the edges. "Someone who's trying to help you." A pause. "Though you don't seem particularly good at accepting help." There was a dry humor in his tone that caught her off guard. Mira pressed her back against the nearest tree, ignoring the way her injured ankle screamed in protest. Her eyes strained against the darkness, searching for movement. "I don't need help from strange men in the woods," she said, trying to sound braver than she felt. "I've had enough of that for one lifetime." A low sound, not quite a laugh, but close. "Fair enough. But strange men in the woods didn't just chase off your... What was he? Boyfriend? Husband? None of your business. You're bleeding, your ankle's twisted, possibly broken, and you're about 8 miles from the nearest town through terrain that gets significantly worse from here." Another pause. "I'd say that makes it my business when I find you on my land." His land. Mira's mind raced, trying to remember what she'd heard about this area. Private property. Acres and acres of forest owned by someone. She'd never paid attention to the details. "I didn't know," she said quietly. "I was just running." "I know." Something in his voice softened, just barely. "I saw." Her heart skipped. "You saw? How long were you?" The realization hit her like cold water. The wolf. Where did it go? Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken things. Then he stepped into the moonlight, and Mira forgot how to breathe for the second time that night. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that filled out a dark Henley shirt. His hair was black, slightly too long, falling across a face that looked like it had been carved from stone and shadows. Strong jaw, sharp cheekbones, and eyes that caught the moonlight and threw it back in shades of amber and gold, the same eyes as the wolf. Impossible. "You're staring," he observed, his mouth quirking slightly at the corner. Mira realized she was. She also realized she was still on the ground, covered in dirt and blood, looking up at possibly the most intimidating man she'd ever seen. "You're tall." Of all the things she could have said, that's what came out. Brilliant. His almost smile deepened. "And you're injured. May I?" He gestured toward her ankle, and every instinct Marcus had trained into her over 2 years screamed to say no. Don't let him close. Don't let him touch you. Don't trust the gentle voice and the careful approach, because that's how it always starts. But this man wasn't Marcus, and she was so tired of being afraid. "Okay," she whispered. He moved with surprising grace for someone his size, kneeling beside her in the dirt without hesitation. This close, she could see details: the silver that threaded through his dark hair at the temples, the small scar that cut through his left eyebrow, the way his hands were marked with calluses and old scars of their own. Hands that had seen violence. But when they touched her ankle, gentle, careful, barely applying pressure, they felt nothing like Marcus's. "Not broken," he said after a moment. "Badly sprained. You won't be walking out of here tonight. I can manage. You'll damage it further, possibly permanently." Those amber eyes lifted to meet hers, and she saw something flicker in their depths. "Let me help you. Please." That last word, "please," said with such quiet sincerity, undid something in her chest. "I don't even know your name," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Kale." He sat back slightly, giving her space. Cale Brennan. And you are? Mira Hayes. She hesitated. And I don't understand what's happening. I know. He stood in one fluid motion, then extended his hand down to her. But it's not safe to have this conversation here. Not in the open. There are things in these woods that are drawn to blood. She thought of the wolf, of those impossible eyes, of the way this man moved like shadows in moonlight given form. Things like you? She asked quietly. Cale's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his gaze. A recognition, maybe, or respect. Smart girl. Yes, things like me. He was admitting it, whatever it was. The reasonable part of Mira's brain insisted this was insane, that she should be running, screaming, doing anything but taking the hand of a man who just implied he wasn't entirely human. But the reasonable part of her brain had also told her to stay with Marcus, to believe his apologies, to think she could fix him. She was done listening to the reasonable part. Mira placed her hand in his, and the contact sent a shock of warmth up her arm that had nothing to do with temperature. His fingers closed around hers, careful, controlled, and he lifted her to her feet like she weighed nothing. I have a cabin about a quarter-mile north, he said, keeping one hand under her elbow to steady her. Medical supplies. A phone if you want to call someone. A locked door. Why are you helping me? Cale was silent for a long moment, his jaw tightening. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. Because 2 years ago, I found my sister bleeding in a forest much like this one, running from a man much like yours, and I was 10 minutes too late. The weight of those words settled between them like stones. I'm sorry, Mira whispered. Don't be sorry. Just let me make sure you survive the night. He shifted, positioning himself so she could lean on him, without putting weight on her injured ankle. Can you walk if I help? She nodded, not trusting her voice. They moved through the forest together, Cale's presence solid and steady beside her. The trees seemed to part for him, the shadows bending away. And though Mira knew she should be terrified of him, of the night, of whatever truth was waiting in that cabin, all she felt was a strange, inexplicable sense of safety. Like for the first time in 2 years, she could finally breathe. The cabin emerged from the darkness like something out of a dream. It wasn't what Mira had expected, not some ramshackle hunter's shelter or forgotten outpost. This was solid, well-maintained, with large windows that reflected the moonlight and a wraparound porch that spoke of quiet evenings and careful planning. Smoke curled from a stone chimney, and warm light glowed from within. Someone lived here. Really lived here. You weren't kidding about the quarter-mile, Mira said, trying to mask how much the walk had cost her. Every step had sent fire shooting through her ankle, but she'd bitten her tongue and kept moving. She'd learned to hide pain well. Cale glanced at her, and something flickered across his face. You should have told me it was too much. I would have carried you. I don't need to be carried. No, he agreed quietly. You don't need to be. But sometimes accepting help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. The words settled into her chest, uncomfortable and true. He guided her up the porch steps, his hand never leaving her elbow. The touch was impersonal, steadying nothing like Marcus's possessive grip, but Mira was hyper-aware of it nonetheless, of the heat of his palm through her torn dress sleeve, of how carefully he matched his pace to hers. The inside of the cabin matched the outside, organized, masculine, surprisingly comfortable. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, flames crackling low, leather furniture that looked well-worn, bookshelves packed with titles, ranging from wildlife biology to ancient mythology. And everywhere, the scent of cedar and something wild she couldn't name. It smelled like the forest. Like him. Sit, Cale said, gesturing to the couch near the fire. I'll get the first aid kit. Mira lowered herself carefully onto the leather, watching as he disappeared through a doorway. The moment he left, the room felt larger, colder. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware of how much she was shaking. What am I doing here? She'd run from one strange man straight into the arms of another. One who'd admitted, or at least heavily implied, that he wasn't entirely human. One whose eyes matched the wolf that had saved her life. The logical choice was to call the police, to get back to civilization, to... You're thinking too loud. Mira jumped as Cale returned, carrying a red case and a glass of water. He set both on the coffee table, then settled onto the floor in front of her, deliberately putting himself lower. She realized. Less threatening. Drink, he said, nodding to the water. You're in shock. Your body needs it. She wanted to argue, but her throat was parched. The water was cold and clean, and she drank half the glass before setting it down with shaking hands. Cale opened the first aid kit with practiced efficiency. "May I look at your ankle?" His formality was almost jarring, like he was afraid one wrong word would send her running. Smart man. "Yes," she said softly. He lifted her foot with the same careful gentleness he'd shown in the forest, his brow furrowing as he examined the swelling. His hands were warm, steady, and Mira found herself studying his face in the firelight. The sharp angles, the concentrated expression, the way his jaw tensed when he found a particularly bad bruise. "This is going to hurt," he warned before beginning to wrap the ankle in a compression bandage. "Tell me if it's too much." It did hurt, but Mira had learned to breathe through pain, to dissociate, survive. She watched the flames dance in the fireplace and tried not to think about how Marcus used to Mira. Cale's voice cut through the memory. "Stay with me. You're safe here." She blinked, realizing tears were streaming down her face. "I'm sorry. I don't apologize for feeling." He finished securing the bandage, then sat back, giving her space, especially not for feelings that bastard gave you every right to have. The bluntness surprised a wet laugh out of her. "You don't even know what he did." "I know enough." Cale's eyes met hers, amber burning in the firelight. "I know the way you flinched when I moved too fast. I know the way you apologize for things that aren't your fault. I know the way you braced yourself for impact when I touched your ankle, like you expected it to be punishment instead of help." Each word landed like a physical blow. Because he was right. He'd seen it all in the space of an hour, catalogued every learned response, every survival mechanism. "How?" she whispered. "Because I've seen it before." His voice went rough, distant. "My sister, Elena. She was with someone for 3 years before she finally ran. By then, she was so broken she didn't even recognize herself anymore. You said you were too late." "I was." Pain flashed across his face, raw and unguarded. "She made it to the forest. She called me. But her ex found her before I could get there. By the time I tracked her scent," he stopped, jaw clenching. "By the time I found her, she was already gone. Tracked her scent." The words hung between them, confirmation of what Mira had already suspected. "The wolf," she said quietly. "In the forest. That was you, wasn't it?" Cale didn't answer immediately. He stood, moving to the fireplace, his back to her. In the flickering light, his shadow seemed larger than it should be, almost predatory. "Yes," he finally said. "That was me." The admission should have terrified her, should have sent her scrambling for the door despite her injured ankle. But all Mira felt was a strange sense of relief, like finally knowing the monster's shape made it less frightening than the unknown. "What are you?" she asked. He turned, and in the firelight, his eyes gleamed gold. "Do you really want to know? Once I tell you, you can't unknow it. Can't go back to believing the world is safe and ordinary. The world was never safe." Mira's voice came out stronger than she expected. "And I stopped believing in ordinary the moment Marcus put his hands on me the first time and told me it was love." Something like approval flickered across Cale's face. He moved back to the couch, but this time he sat on it, still maintaining distance. But closer. Close enough that she could see the silver threading through his dark hair. Close enough to smell cedar and smoke and wildness. "I'm a shifter," he said simply. "Werewolf, if you prefer the old term. Born, not bitten. Part of a bloodline that's existed in these mountains for 300 years. That's impossible. So is a wolf the size of a small bear appearing exactly when you needed it most." His mouth quirked. "Yet here we are." Here they were indeed. Mira looked at this impossible man with his amber eyes and his careful hands and his grief for a sister he couldn't save. And she made a choice. "Tell me everything," she said. Cale studied her for a long moment, as if weighing how much truth she could handle. Then he leaned back, his gaze drifting to the fire. "My family, the Brennans, we've held these mountains for generations," he began, his voice taking on the cadence of an old story. "We're not the only pack in the region, but we're the oldest, the strongest. Or we were, before the fracturing." "Fracturing?" "A split. 15 years ago, my father died defending our territory from a rival pack. My older brother Dominic took over as alpha, but Dominic, he had different ideas about how shifters should exist in the modern world." Cale's jaw tightened. He wanted integration. Revelation. He thought humans would accept us if we just showed them we meant no harm. "And you disagreed?" I knew better. His eyes found hers again, dark with memory. Humans fear what they don't understand, and fear makes them dangerous. I argued for keeping the old ways, staying hidden, protecting our own, maintaining the boundaries between our world and theirs. Mira pulled the blanket Kale had draped over her shoulders tighter. What happened? Dominic called me a coward, said I was living in the past. We fought not just with words. He held up his left hand, and Mira saw the scars there. Silvery and raised. Silver burns us, scars us permanently. He used a blade our grandfather carried, said if I wanted to cling to old ways, I could carry their mark. The casual cruelty of it made her stomach turn. Your own brother did that? Family doesn't always mean safety. You know that better than most. His voice softened. After that night, I left the main pack, built this place. I still patrol the territory. It's in my blood. I can't stop, but I stay separate, alone. Except for Elena. Pain flickered across his face. Except for Elena. She came to me after she left her ex the first time. Stayed here for 3 months. I thought she was healing, getting stronger. His hands clenched into fists. But he found her, convinced her he'd changed. She went back. They always say they've changed. Mira whispered, thinking of Marcus's tearful apologies, his promises, his gifts. The second time she ran, I told her to come straight here, to call me the moment she was in the woods. She did everything right. His voice cracked slightly, but he was faster than I expected, more vicious. By the time I reached her scent trail, by the time I shifted and tracked her through the trees, he stopped, his breathing uneven. Mira watched emotions war across his face, grief, rage, guilt that sat so heavy she could almost feel its weight. Without thinking, she reached out and placed her hand over his scarred one. Kale froze. His eyes dropped to where her small, pale hand rested on his marked skin. And something shifted in his expression, surprise. Maybe, or something deeper she couldn't name. I'm sorry, she said quietly. For your loss, for your pain, for all of it. You shouldn't be comforting me. His voice was rough. I'm the one who's supposed to be helping you. Maybe we can help each other. The words hung between them, fragile and honest. Kale turned his hand over slowly, carefully, until his palm pressed against hers. His hand was so much larger, scarred and calloused, but the way he held hers was achingly gentle. When I saw you in the forest, he said, his eyes locked on their joined hands. When I heard you running, smelled your fear, something in me just knew. Knew you were like her. Knew that if I didn't reach you in time, I'd be finding another body, another woman who deserved better than the world gave her. But you did reach me. Barely. His thumb traced a small circle on her palm, probably unconsciously. If he'd had another 30 seconds with you alone, he didn't. Mira squeezed his hand, feeling the strength in it, the leashed power. You saved me. Whatever you are, whatever else is true, you saved my life. Kale looked up at her then, and the raw emotion in his amber eyes made her breath catch. I couldn't save her, but I could save you. Had to save you. Why? The question came out as barely a whisper. He was silent for a long moment, his eyes searching her face like he was trying to memorize every detail. I don't know, he finally admitted. But from the moment I caught your scent on the wind, fear and blood and something else, something like lavender and rain, my wolf knew you were important, knew you were mine to protect. Mine. The word should have set off alarms, should have reminded her of Marcus's possessiveness, his suffocating control. But when Kale said it, it felt different. Not ownership, something else entirely. Does that scare you? He asked, watching her carefully. It should, Mira said honestly. Everything about this should scare me, but I think my fear meter is broken. Or maybe, she paused, trying to put the feeling into words. Maybe I'm just tired of being afraid of the wrong things. Understanding flashed in his eyes. The monster in the nice suit. Exactly. She managed a small smile. At least you're honest about having teeth. That surprised a real laugh out of him, low and rusty, like he didn't use it often. The sound did something warm and unexpected to her chest. I like you, Mira Hayes, he said, a smile lingering at the corners of his mouth. You're either very brave or completely insane. Can't I be both? In my experience, the brave ones usually are. His smile faded slightly. You should rest. It's past midnight, and you've been through hell tonight. There's a guest room. Upstairs, clean sheets. Locked door if it makes you feel safer. Part of her wanted to protest, to prove she wasn't weak, wasn't broken, but exhaustion was pulling at her bones, and the ankle Cale had wrapped was throbbing in time with her heartbeat. "Will you be here?" she asked. "In the morning? I'm not going anywhere." He stood, helping her to her feet with that same careful gentleness. "You're under my protection now. That means something in my world. It means everything." As he guided her toward the stairs, Mira felt something shift inside her, not trust, not yet, but the possibility of it. The first fragile thread of hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd run into the right darkness. Mira woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee drifting up the stairs. For one disoriented moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back: the forest, Marcus, the wolf with amber eyes, Cale's quiet confession in the firelight. She sat up, slowly, her body cataloging injuries. Bruised ribs, cuts on her feet, the dull throb of her wrapped ankle. But alive. She was alive. The guest room was simple but comfortable pine furniture, a thick quilt in shades of forest green, and windows that overlooked an expanse of wilderness that seemed to stretch forever. No neighbors, no roads, just trees and sky and the kind of isolation that would have terrified her yesterday. Today, it felt like freedom. Someone had left clothes folded on the dresser, soft flannel pants, and an oversized gray sweater. They were too big, clearly Cale's, but they were clean and warm. Mira changed carefully, her torn dress a reminder of everything she was leaving behind. She should call someone. Her sister, maybe, though they hadn't spoken in months. Or the police. Report Marcus for... what? He'd never hit her where it showed. Never left evidence. Just the slow, methodical breaking of her spirit that left no marks anyone could photograph. The thought of going back, of pressing charges, facing him in court, listening to his lawyer paint her as unstable made her stomach turn. Not today, she decided. Today, I just breathe. She found Cale on the back porch, coffee mug in hand, staring out at the forest. In daylight, he looked different, still imposing, still dangerous, but somehow more human. His dark hair was damp, like he'd showered, and he'd changed into jeans and a thermal shirt that emphasized the broad line of his shoulders. He turned when he heard the door, and something flickered in his eyes when he saw her wearing his clothes. "Morning. How's the ankle?" "Better." She hobbled to the railing, accepting the second mug of coffee he offered. "Still hurts, but better. It'll take a few days to heal properly. Longer if you push it too hard." He paused. "There's food inside when you're ready. Nothing fancy, eggs, toast. I wasn't expecting company. You don't have to take care of me." "I know." His voice was quiet. "But I'm going to anyway." They stood in comfortable silence, sipping coffee and watching the forest wake up. Birds called from the trees. Somewhere in the distance, a stream rushed over stones. It was peaceful in a way Mira had almost forgotten existed. "What happens now?" she finally asked. "I can't stay here forever." "Why not?" The question caught her off guard. "Because I have a life, an apartment, a job." Even as she said it, the words felt hollow. What life? The one where Marcus had a key to her apartment? Where he'd convinced her to quit her marketing job because it took too much of her time away from them? Where her friends had slowly disappeared because he always found reasons they couldn't be trusted? "Do you want to go back to that?" Cale asked, his eyes too knowing. "No." The admission came easier than it should have. "But I can't just hide in the woods forever." "You're not hiding. You're healing. There's a difference." He set down his mug, leaning against the porch railing. "Stay. A few days. Let your ankle mend. Let yourself breathe without looking over your shoulder. Then we'll figure out the next step." "We? You think I'm letting you walk back into his reach alone?" Something fierce entered Cale's voice. "He knows you ran. He'll be looking, and men like him don't let go easily." Mira's hands tightened around her mug. "You don't owe me anything." "This isn't about owing." Cale moved closer, not crowding her, but near enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "Mira, I failed my sister. I live with that every day. But you're alive. You're here. And I'm not failing again. I'm not her. I know." His voice softened. "But you deserve the same thing she did. Safety. Time. A chance to remember who you were before someone tried to break you." The words hit too close to home. Mira blinked back sudden tears, staring determinedly at her coffee. I don't even know who that person is anymore. Then maybe it's time to find out. Before she could respond, Kale's head suddenly snapped toward the tree line, his entire body going tense. The shift was dramatic, one moment relaxed, the next coiled like a spring, every sense focused on something Mira couldn't detect. "What is it?" she whispered. "Someone's coming." His eyes had taken on that amber glow she recognized from the night before. "Stay behind me." Her heart hammered as Kale moved to the porch steps, placing himself between her and whatever approached. Seconds later, she heard its footsteps crunching through underbrush, getting closer. A woman emerged from the trees. She was striking tall and lean with silver blonde hair pulled back in a severe braid. She wore tactical clothing and moved with a predator's grace, but it was her eyes that made Mira's breath catch. They were the same impossible amber as Kale's. Another shifter. "Kale." The woman's voice was cool, assessing. "We need to talk. Sienna." Kale's tone was carefully neutral. "I'm not Pack anymore. Whatever. Dominic wants. This isn't about Dominic." Sienna's gaze shifted to Mira, and something flickered across her face. Recognition? Surprise? Though it might be, once he finds out about her. "She's under my protection. I can see that." Sienna's mouth curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. "The whole territory can probably smell your claim on her by now." "Very subtle, Kale." "Claim?" Mira looked between them, confused and increasingly uneasy. Kale's jaw tightened. "State your business or leave." "There's been a breach at the eastern border. Something killed 3 deer, drained them completely of blood, and left the carcasses arranged in a pattern." Sienna's expression darkened. "This wasn't a shifter kill. This was something else. Something old. That's not my problem anymore. It is when the trail leads here. Straight to your territory." Sienna's eyes found Mira again, and this time there was definite concern in them. "Whatever's out there, Kale, it's hunting. And it's coming this way." The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Kale's hands clenched into fists at his sides, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of barely controlled fury. "How long do we have?" "Maybe a day. Maybe less." Sienna hesitated. "Dominic wants to call a pack meeting. All shifters in the territory, including you. He thinks it might be, don't say it, a revenant." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Mira didn't know what it meant, but judging by the way Kyle's face went pale, it was nothing good. "Impossible," he said. "They were wiped out a century ago." "Were they?" Sienna challenged. "Or did we just stop looking?" Kale turned away from Sienna, his hands braced against the porch railing like he was physically restraining himself. "Tell Dominic I'll think about it." "That's not good enough." Sienna's voice sharpened. "Whatever this thing is, it's already killed 3 times that we know of. If it's really a revenant, then we're all already dead, and a pack meeting won't change that." Kale's voice was flat, final. "Now get off my land." Sienna's eyes flashed gold, her body tensing. For a moment, Mira thought she might actually attack. Then the blonde woman's gaze shifted to her again, and something in her expression softened minutely. "You're playing a dangerous game, bringing a human into this," Sienna said quietly. "Especially now. She's not part of this. She is the moment you claimed her." Sienna took a step back toward the tree line. "The meeting is tonight at moonrise. Northridge. If you don't come, Dominic will assume you've gone rogue completely, and you know what that means." She disappeared into the forest as silently as she'd arrived, leaving nothing but the whisper of disturbed leaves in her wake. Mira waited until she was certain they were alone before speaking. "What's a revenant?" Kale didn't turn around. His shoulders were rigid, and she could see the tension radiating through every line of his body. "A nightmare. A legend we tell young shifters to keep them from straying too far from pack territory. But you think it's real. I think." He finally turned to face her, and the fear in his eyes made her stomach drop. "I think there are things in this world older and darker than shifters, things that feed on us the way we used to feed on humans, before we learned to control ourselves." "What do they want? Power? Blood? Life force?" He moved closer, his voice dropping. "A revenant is a shifter who gave up their humanity completely. Not just the physical transformation, but everything that makes us more than animals. They're consumed by the wolf, twisted by dark magic or ancient curses, until all that's left is hunger." Mira thought of the drained deer, the arranged carcasses. "And you think one is coming here?" "I think something is." Kale's hand lifted as if to touch her face, then dropped. which means you need to leave. Today. I'll drive you to the next town. Help you get somewhere safe. No, Mira, I said no. She straightened despite the pain in her ankle, meeting his eyes. You told me last night that I was under your protection, that it meant something in your world. Did you mean it? Of course I meant it, but then protect me here. Her voice was steady, surprising even herself. I'm not running anymore, Kale. Not from Marcus, not from monsters, not from anything. I'm tired of being afraid. Something fierce and proud flashed across his face. You have no idea what you're asking. Then explain it to me. She moved closer, ignoring the protest from her ankle. What did Sienna mean about you claiming me? Why could the whole territory smell it? Kale's jaw worked, his eyes dropping to the floor. When he spoke, his voice was rough. Shifters. We're territorial. Protective. When we decide someone or something is ours to guard, our scent marks them. It's instinctive. Unconscious, usually. You marked me. Last night, when I carried you. When I bandaged your ankle, he looked up at her, vulnerability raw in his amber eyes. When I sat next to you and told you things I've never told anyone else. My wolf recognized you as someone worth protecting, someone worth keeping. The air between them felt charged, heavy with unspoken things. Mira's heart was racing, but not from fear. And what does that mean? Exactly? It means other shifters will see you as mine, under my care. It means challenging you is challenging me. He paused. It also means my wolf will be possessive, protective to the point of violence if anyone threatens you, like Marcus. Especially like Marcus. The growl that entered his voice made the hair on her arms stand up. If he comes near you again, my wolf won't settle for just scaring him off. Mira should be disturbed by that. Should be backing away from this man who just admitted to being possessive and potentially violent. But all she felt was a strange sense of safety, of being seen, of finally having someone in her corner who wouldn't make excuses or tell her she was overreacting. What if I want to be yours? The question came out before she could stop it. Kale went very still. Don't say things like that unless you mean them. Why not? Because my wolf will take it as permission. His eyes were blazing now, amber shot through with gold. Because I've spent the last 12 hours trying to convince myself that this feeling, this certainty that you're supposed to be here, with me, is just trauma response or protective instinct. But if you tell me you want this, want me, I won't be able to pretend anymore. Mira's breath caught. She'd known there was something between them, something electric and impossible. But hearing him admit it made it real in a way that was both terrifying and exhilarating. I don't know what I want, she said honestly. 24 hours ago I thought I knew my life, thought I could manage Marcus, thought I could fix things. Now I'm standing in a cabin in the middle of nowhere talking to a werewolf about territorial instincts and ancient monsters. I'm completely out of my depth. Then why stay? Because for the first time in 2 years I feel like I can breathe. She met his eyes. Because you look at me like I'm strong instead of broken. Because when you touch me, I don't flinch. I don't know if that's enough to build something on. But I know I'm not ready to walk away from it yet. Kale closed the distance between them in 2 strides. He didn't touch her, but he was close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. Could see the war raging behind his eyes. If you stay, he said, his voice low and rough. I'm going to that pack meeting tonight, and I'm taking you with me. Why? Because the only way to keep you safe is to make sure every shifter in this territory knows exactly who you belong to. His hand finally rose, fingers ghosting along her jawline with devastating gentleness. And because I need them to understand that if anything happens to you, there won't be enough of them left to tell the story. It should have sounded like a threat. Instead, it sounded like a promise. Okay, Mira whispered. Then let's go meet your family. The hours before moonrise passed in a strange blur of preparation and growing tension. Kale spent most of the afternoon teaching Mira the basics of shifter pack dynamics, who to avoid eye contact with, how to stay close without appearing weak, the subtle body language that separated respectful distance from challenge. It was like learning an entirely new language, one written in posture and scent and unspoken hierarchies. Dominic will test you, Kale said, checking the laces on her borrowed boots for the 3rd time. He'd found her sturdier clothes, jeans that had to be rolled at the ankles, a thick sweater, a jacket that smelled like cedar and him. He'll try to intimidate you, make you feel small. Don't let him. And if I do, then he'll see you as a liability, something to be removed for the pack's safety. Kale's jaw tightened. Stay close to me, don't wander. And if anyone tries to separate us, you run. Straight back here. The cabin's warded with protective symbols. Nothing can cross the threshold without my permission. Mira wanted to ask more about the wards, about the strange silver symbols she'd noticed carved into the doorframe, but Cale's phone buzzed before she could. He read the message, his expression darkening. It's time. The drive to Northridge took 20 minutes along dirt roads that barely deserved the name. Cale's truck handled the terrain easily, but Mira's stomach churned with each mile. She was about to walk into a gathering of werewolves, actual werewolves, and pretend she belonged there. What am I doing? Second thoughts? Cale asked, his hand finding hers across the console. 100 thoughts, maybe. She managed a weak smile. But I'm not backing out. You could. I'd take you somewhere safe, come back alone. No. She squeezed his hand. We do this together. Something in his expression shifted pride mixed with concern and something deeper she couldn't name. Together. He agreed. Northridge turned out to be a clearing deep in the forest, surrounded by towering pines and illuminated by a massive bonfire that sent sparks spiraling into the darkening sky. As they approached, Mira counted at least 30 people gathered in loose groups, their conversations dying as Cale's truck pulled up. 30 pairs of eyes turned toward them. 30 predators assessing potential prey. Mira's hand tightened on Cale's. Breathe, he murmured, coming around to help her down from the truck. You're with me. That means something here. They walked toward the gathering, and Mira felt the weight of every stare, some curious, some hostile, a few openly shocked. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through grass. He brought a human. Must be out of his mind. Smells like his claim is fresh. A man stepped forward from the crowd, and Mira knew immediately this was Dominic. He had Cale's height and build but was broader through the shoulders. His dark hair shot through with more silver. His eyes were amber like all the others, but colder, calculating. Little brother, Dominic's voice carried easily across the clearing. You actually came, and you brought entertainment? Cale's hand tightened on Mira's waist. I brought someone under my protection. Show respect or we leave. Respect? Dominic's laugh was sharp. You abandoned this pack 3 years ago, Cale. You don't get to show up now and make demands. You scarred me and called me a coward. I'd say that settled any obligation I had to you. The tension ratcheted up instantly. Several shifters moved closer, forming a loose circle around them. Mira felt trapped, exposed, but Cale stood steady beside her, his presence an anchor. Still bitter about that? Dominic circled them slowly, a wolf stalking prey. You challenged my authority. In front of the entire pack. What did you expect? Discussion. Compromise, not a silver blade. Maybe if you'd been stronger, you could have stopped me. Dominic's eyes cut to Mira, dismissive and cruel. But you always were soft. First Elena, now this fragile little thing. Tell me, brother, do you collect broken humans to make yourself feel powerful? Cale moved so fast Mira didn't see it. One moment he was beside her, the next he had Dominic by the throat. Lifted off the ground, his eyes blazing pure gold. Say her name again, Cale growled, and the sound wasn't entirely human. I dare you. The clearing erupted. Shifters surged forward, some trying to pull Cale back, others forming a protective wall around Dominic. Sienna appeared at Mira's side, pulling her out of the chaos. Stay here, the blonde woman commanded. Don't move. Mira watched helplessly as Cale and Dominic faced off, both of them trembling, with barely controlled rage. Around them, the other shifters were shouting, choosing sides, the careful hierarchy dissolving into potential violence. Then a new voice cut through the chaos, ancient and commanding. Enough. Everyone froze. An old woman stepped into the firelight, leaning on a gnarled walking stick. She was tiny, barely 5 feet tall, but the power radiating from her made Mira's skin prickle. Her hair was white as moonlight, her eyes a pale amber that seemed to see everything. Elder Mora, Dominic said, immediately stepping back from Cale. Around the clearing, every shifter lowered their heads in respect. The old woman's gaze swept the gathering before landing on Mira. So, the human who has captured the heart of a lone wolf. Come here, child. Mira's legs felt like water, but she forced herself to walk forward. Cale moved to intercept, but Elder Mora raised one hand and he stopped, trembling with the effort. Let me see you. Eyes were kind, despite their otherworldly quality. She reached up with one weathered hand and touched Mira's cheek. and suddenly Mira felt like every secret, every fear, every hope was being laid bare. Interesting, Mora murmured. Very interesting indeed. What is? Mira managed. You've been marked by more than just Kale's protection. The elder's thumb traced a line down Mira's jaw. There's old magic on you, child. Ancient magic. The kind that draws darkness like moths to flame. Mira's blood went cold. I don't understand. The Revenant. Mora's expression grew grave. It's not hunting randomly. It's hunting you. The clearing erupted in shocked whispers. Kale was at Mira's side in an instant, pulling her close. That's impossible, he said. She's never been in these woods before last night. Hasn't she? Mora's pale eyes gleamed. Tell me, child. Your mother. What was her name? Sarah. Sarah Hayes. Why does that? Mira stopped, a distant memory surfacing. Her mother's stories. Fairy tales about wolves and forests and a family that had to leave the mountains. Stories Mira had dismissed as make-believe. Oh gods, she whispered. My mother grew up near here. She left when she was 18. She never said why. Elder Mora nodded slowly. Because she fell in love with a human. Because she chose your father over her pack. Over her birthright. The world tilted sideways. What are you saying? Mira demanded. I'm saying, child, that you're not entirely human. Mora's smile was sad, and the Revenant knows it. The silence in the clearing was absolute. Mira felt like the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. Not entirely human. The words echoed in her mind. Impossible and yet somehow explaining everything the way she'd always felt different. The dreams of running through forests on 4 legs. The inexplicable pull she'd felt toward these mountains even before Marcus had driven her here. No, she said, her voice shaking. That's not possible. I've never shifted, never felt anything like, because your mother suppressed it. Elder Mora's expression was gentle but firm. She knew what it would mean if you manifested. The pack would have claimed you, trained you. She wanted you to have a choice she never did. Kale's arm tightened around her waist. How do you know this? Because I helped her leave. Mora turned to address the gathered shifters. Sarah Winters, as she was known then, came to me 26 years ago. She was in love with a human man, pregnant with his child. She begged me for a way to ensure her daughter would never have to choose between 2 worlds. You gave her a suppression charm, Sienna said, understanding dawning in her eyes. To bind the wolf. A temporary measure. One that would hold until the child's 25th birthday. Mora's gaze returned to Mira. How old are you, child? 25. The answer came out as a whisper. I turned 25 3 months ago. The murmurs that rippled through the crowd were a mixture of fascination and fear. Dominic stepped forward, his expression calculating. If what you're saying is true, she's experiencing her first awakening. Untrained, unstable. His eyes narrowed on Mira. She's a danger to herself and everyone around her. She's under my protection, Kale growled. Your protection means nothing here. Dominic's voice took on the weight of command. As Alpha, I have the authority to decide her fate, and I say she needs to be contained until we can assess. You're not taking her anywhere. The challenge in Kale's voice was unmistakable. Around the clearing, shifters tensed, sensing what was coming. Mira felt Kale's body begin to tremble, felt the heat building beneath his skin. Don't do this, she whispered urgently. Please, Kale. If he tries to take you, I'll tear him apart. Kale's eyes were pure gold now, his pupils elongated. Brother or not? Elder Mora struck her walking stick against the ground, the sharp crack echoing like thunder. There will be no violence tonight. Dominic, stand down. Kale, control yourself. He can't control himself, Dominic said with cruel satisfaction. Because she's not just under his protection, is she? She's his mate. I can smell it on both of them, the bond forming, the recognition. My soft-hearted brother has found his fated match in a dormant shifter who doesn't even know what she is. Mate. The word sent a shock through Mira's system. She looked up at Kale, saw the truth written in his anguished expression. You knew, she said. This morning, when Sienna mentioned the claim. You knew. I suspected. His voice was rough. The wolf knows before we do. It recognizes its other half, its complement. But I wouldn't force that on you. Wouldn't even tell you unless I was about to find out anyway. Hurt lanced through her chest. Were you ever going to tell me the truth? I was trying to protect you. By lying. She pulled away from him, her ankle protesting the sudden movement. Everyone in my life has lied to me, Kale. Marcus lied about loving me. My mother lied about what I am. And now you, it's not the same. Pain flickered across his face. Mira, please. A howl split the night long, anguished and utterly inhuman. Every shifter in the clearing went rigid. Elder Mora's face drained of color. It's here, she whispered. The Revenant, it's come for her. The second howl was closer, coming from the western tree line, then the eastern, then the north. 3 distinct voices, circling the clearing. That's not possible, Dominic said, fear creeping into his voice for the first time. There can't be 3. Not 3. Sienna had moved to the edge of the firelight, her body tense and ready. 1. Moving so fast it sounds like multiple. The creature burst from the trees. Calling it a wolf was like calling a hurricane a breeze. It was massive, easily twice the size of even the largest shifter, with fur that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Its eyes burned red as fresh blood, and when it opened its jaws, Mira saw rows of teeth that looked more like a shark's than a wolf's. But it was the smell that made her gag rotting meat and something else, something wrong and ancient and utterly corrupted. Circle formation, Dominic shouted, his voice cracking with command. Protect the human! The shifters moved as one, forming a defensive wall between Mira and the Revenant. Kale was at the front, his body already beginning to shift, bones cracking, muscles reforming, dark fur rippling across his skin. The Revenant's red eyes locked onto Mira through the gaps in the defensive line. When it spoke, its voice was a chorus of whispers, like 100 dead things speaking at once. Daughter of Sarah, heir of winter's blood. You smell of power unawakened, of potential unrealized. Its tongue too long, too black licked across its teeth. Give yourself to me. Let me taste what your mother denied us. Stay behind me, Kale snarled, his transformation nearly complete. Don't look at it. Don't listen. But Mira couldn't look away, because something inside her was responding to the Revenant's call. Something that had been sleeping her entire life was stirring, unfurling, reaching toward the surface with painful intensity. Her skin felt too tight. Her bones ached. And beneath it all, she felt something primal and powerful, clawing its way up from the depths of her being. Mora, she gasped, falling to her knees. Something's wrong. I feel... Your wolf is awakening. The elder was beside her instantly, hands on her shoulders. The Revenant's presence, the stress it's triggering your first shift. I don't know how. Your body knows. Trust it. Pain exploded through Mira's limbs. She heard herself screaming, heard Kale roaring in response, heard the Revenant's laughter echoing across the clearing. Yes, it hissed. Show me what you are, little one. Show me the wolf your mother tried to hide. Through the agony, Mira felt Kale's presence beside her, his hand finding hers even as his own body completed its transformation. His touch was an anchor, a lifeline, reminding her she wasn't alone. I've got you, his voice rumbled, barely recognizable but unmistakably his. Whatever happens, I've got you. The bond between them flared to life, and suddenly Mira could feel everything he felt: his fear for her, his rage at the Revenant, his absolute unwavering certainty that they were meant to face this together. And beneath it all, a truth that shook her to her core. He loved her, completely, impossibly, despite everything. The realization gave her something to hold on to as the change took her. The transformation was nothing like Mira had imagined. It wasn't graceful or mystical. It was brutal, agonizing, and utterly consuming. Her bones shattered and reformed, her muscles tore and rebuilt themselves, her senses exploded outward until she could hear heartbeats 50 yards away and smell individual fear scents from every shifter in the clearing. But through it all, she felt Kale's hand, now a massive paw pressed against hers. Felt his strength flowing through the mate bond, steadying her, showing her wordlessly how to surrender to the change instead of fighting it. Let go. His presence seemed to whisper in her mind. Trust the wolf. Trust me. And she did. The pain crested one final time, then broke like a wave. Mira gasped, except it came out as a sharp exhale of breath. And when she looked down, she saw white paws where her hands should be. White, pure as fresh snow, unmarked except for silver patterns that swirled across her legs like frost on a window. She was beautiful. The thought came from Kale, clear as day in her mind, and Mira's head whipped around to stare at him. He was magnificent in wolf form, massive and dark, with those amber eyes now blazing like captured sunlight. When he looked at her, she felt his. awe, his pride, his fierce protectiveness like a physical thing. "Can you hear me?" She tried to think at him. Every word. His mental voice was rough, intimate, wrapping around her consciousness like warm smoke. The mate bond allows it. "How do you feel?" Powerful. And it was true. Despite the trauma of the shift, despite everything, Mira felt more alive than she ever had. Every sense was heightened, every movement fluid and natural. This was what had been missing her entire life. "Is this what you feel all the time?" "Welcome home, little wolf." The Revenant's snarl shattered their moment. It had been watching the transformation with those burning red eyes, and now it circled the defensive line of shifters, searching for weakness. The pack held formation, but Mira could smell their fear, could hear the racing of their hearts. "Impressive," the Revenant hissed, its multi-layered voice scraping across Mira's heightened senses. "A white wolf. How rare. How delicious." "Stay in formation," Dominic's commanding voice echoed in her mind. Apparently the Alpha could communicate with all his pack. "It's trying to separate us, isolate the weakest." The Revenant struck. It moved like black lightning, crashing through the defensive line and scattering shifters like bowling pins. Sienna yelped as she was thrown aside. Two males tried to bring it down, but it shook them off with contemptuous ease, and then it was charging straight at Mira. Kael intercepted it mid-leap, the two massive wolves colliding with bone-jarring force. They rolled across the clearing in a blur of dark fur and flashing teeth, snarls echoing off the trees. "Run!" Kael's voice was desperate in her mind even as he fought. "Get to the cabin, the wards, I'm not leaving you." "Mira, please." The Revenant's claws raked across Kael's shoulder, drawing blood that looked black in the firelight. Mira felt his pain through the bond, felt it like her own flesh tearing, and something inside her snapped. She'd spent 2 years running from Marcus, 2 years being afraid, being small, being the victim. But she wasn't that person anymore, wasn't human anymore. She was a wolf. And wolves protected their mates. Mira launched herself at the Revenant with a snarl that surprised even her. She had no training, no technique, just instinct and rage, and the absolute certainty that nothing would hurt Kael while she still had breath in her body. Her teeth found the Revenant's flank, tearing through corrupted flesh. The creature shrieked, a sound like metal scraping bone, and whirled to face her. Up close, she could see that its red eyes were actually hollow, empty sockets filled with writhing shadows. "Foolish pup," it hissed. "You know nothing of what you are." It lunged, jaws wide, but Kael was there bleeding and limping but furious. He hit the Revenant from the side, driving it away from Mira, his mental voice roaring across the bond. "Together! Hit it together!" And suddenly the rest of the pack was there, too. Dominic and Sienna flanking them, a dozen other wolves converging from all sides. The Revenant was powerful, but it couldn't fight an entire pack working in coordination. Elder Mora's voice rang out, strong despite her aged body. She was chanting in a language Mira didn't recognize, her walking stick glowing with silver light. "The binding won't hold long," the elder shouted. "Someone needs to strike the killing blow, pierce its heart with silver." "I don't have silver," Dominic snarled mentally. "I do." Kael's thought was grim. He shifted partially, one hand becoming human again, reaching for something at his neck. A chain, a pendant that glinted silver in the firelight. The same silver that had scarred his hand, the blade his grandfather had carried. "No," Mira thought desperately. "It'll burn you, I know." His amber eyes met hers, and she felt his resolve through the bond. "But this ends tonight. No one else dies because I was too weak to do what's necessary." Kael, Dominic, started. But Kael was already moving. He tore the silver pendant from his neck. It was shaped like a claw, razor sharp, and drove it into the Revenant's chest with a roar of agony and determination. The silver burned his palm, sending smoke rising from his flesh. Mira felt his pain like fire across her own skin, felt him screaming inside even as he pushed deeper, forcing the blessed metal through corrupted flesh and bone. The Revenant's shriek was deafening, its body convulsed, shadows pouring from its eyes and mouth like oil. It writhed and twisted, but Elder Mora's binding held, and Kael kept pushing until the silver claw found its heart. The creature exploded into ash and shadow, dissipating on the wind like a nightmare at dawn. Kael collapsed. Mira was at his side instantly, shifting back to human form without even thinking about it. His hand was a ruin of burned flesh, still smoking where the silver had touched. But he was alive, breathing, looking up at her with those amber eyes full of pain and relief and love. Told you, he rasped. Together. You idiot. Tears streamed down her face as she cradled his head in her lap. You beautiful, brave, stupid idiot. Pretty sure. That's the nicest thing you've ever called me. Despite everything. She laughed. Around them, the pack was reforming, tending to their wounded, processing what had just happened. Elder Mora approached slowly, her expression unreadable. You bear the mate bond marks, she observed, looking between them. Both of you. Kale's good hand found Mira's. Yes. And you? Mora asked Mira. Do you accept this bond? Accept him? Accept what you are? Mira looked down at the man who'd saved her life, who'd protected her, who'd believed in her strength even when she didn't. The man who'd just scarred himself with silver to keep her safe. Yes, she said, to all of it. 3 days after the Revenant's death, Mira sat on Kale's porch watching the sunrise paint the mountains in shades of gold and amber. Her entire world had shifted on its axis. Literally. She was a shifter. A white wolf, apparently a rarity that Elder Mora said appeared only once every few generations. The suppression charm her mother had used was broken, and now Mira could feel the wolf beneath her skin, a constant presence that was both foreign and intimately familiar. It was terrifying. It was liberating. It was right in a way nothing else had ever been. The cabin door opened behind her, and Kale emerged with 2 steaming mugs of coffee. His left hand was still heavily bandaged, the silver burns healing slower than his other injuries. It would scar, he'd told her that with resignation, but he'd refused to express regret. Worth it, he'd said simply when she'd apologized for the 100th time. He settled beside her now, close enough that their shoulders touched. The mate bond hummed between them, a golden thread of connection that let her feel his contentment, his peace, the deep satisfaction of Heather having her near. How's the hand? She asked, accepting the coffee. Itches. Which means it's healing. He flexed his fingers carefully. Mora says another week, and I'll have full mobility back. They sat in comfortable silence, sipping coffee and watching the forest wake. It was a routine they'd fallen into over the past 3 days, quiet mornings, before the chaos of pack politics and training sessions consumed their time. Because that was the new reality. Dominic had offered Mira a place in the pack, and after much discussion, she'd accepted. But she'd made it clear she was choosing this on her own terms, not because of obligation or desperation. Penny for your thoughts? Kale asked, his amber eyes studying her face. I was thinking about Marcus. Mira wrapped her hands around the warm mug. About how I used to wake up every morning feeling trapped, like the walls were closing in. And now I wake up and feel like I can breathe, like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. She turned to look at him. Is that the mate bond talking, or is it really me? Kale was quiet for a moment, considering. The bond enhances what's already there. It doesn't create feelings out of nothing, it amplifies truth. What you feel for me, what I feel for you, it was there before you shifted, before we even knew what we were to each other. How do you know? Because I wanted you safe before my wolf recognized you as mine. Because you trusted me when you had every reason not to. Because when you look at me, I don't see fear or obligation. His voice dropped, intimate and raw. I see choice, Mira. You choosing me. That's not the bond. That's you. Her throat tightened with emotion. I do choose you, even if it's crazy. Even if I've only known you 4 days. 4 days that feel like forever. Yes. She set down her coffee and turned to face him fully. But I need you to understand something. I'm not healed yet. Marcus might be gone. But the damage he did, the way he made me doubt myself, made me small, that doesn't just disappear. I know. I'm going to have bad days. Days where I flinch at shadows. Days where I'm angry at everyone, including you. Days where I don't feel strong enough to be your mate or anyone's wolf. She held his gaze. Can you handle that? Kale reached out with his good hand, cupping her face with devastating gentleness. Mira, I'm not looking for perfection. I'm not looking for someone who has it all together. I'm looking at someone who survived hell and came out fighting. Someone who faced down a revenant in her first shift because she refused to let me face it alone. That was stupid. That was brave. That was you. His thumb traced her cheekbone. Whatever healing you need to do, however long it takes, I'm here. Not because the bond obligates me to be, because I want to be, because you're worth waiting for. Tears pricked her eyes. How do you always know what to say? Years of practice being terrible at it. His mouth quirked in that almost smile she'd come to love. Ask Sienna. She'll tell you I have the emotional intelligence of a rock. Mira laughed despite her tears. She said that? Verbatim. Multiple times. Well, you've improved. I had good motivation. He leaned forward, his forehead touching hers. Can I kiss you? I've wanted to since that first night, but I was trying to be patient, respectful. Not rush you into. Mira closed the distance between them. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, exploring, a question and answer all at once, but then the mate bond flared to life between them, and suddenly gentle wasn't enough. Cale's good hand threaded through her hair, pulling her closer, and Mira's fingers found the collar of his shirt, anchoring herself to him as the kiss deepened. It was nothing like kissing Marcus. There was no performance, no calculation, no fear lurking beneath the surface. This was honest and real and wanted on both sides. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cale rested his forehead against hers again. I love you, he said, voice rough. I know it's too soon. I know you might not be ready to say it back, but I need you to know, I love you too. The words came easier than she expected. It's crazy, and fast and probably ill-advised, but I do. I love you, Cale Brennan. His smile was radiant, transforming his usually serious face into something beautiful and boyish, and completely unguarded. Yeah? Yeah. She kissed him again, quick and sweet, though I reserve the right to be terrified about it. Fair enough. He pulled her into his side, and she settled against him with a contentment that felt like coming home. What do you want to do today? Today? Mira considered. Today I want to call my mother and have a very long conversation about family history and suppression charms, and why she thought lying was a better option than trust. Cale winced. That's going to be intense. Probably, but it needs to happen. She looked up at him. And then I want to train. Sienna said she'd teach me proper fighting technique since my Revenant battle strategy was, quote, enthusiastic but suicidal. She's not wrong. And tonight. Mira hesitated, then pushed forward. Tonight I want to start figuring out what comes next. The practical things, like where I'm going to live, and whether I need to officially break my lease, and if there's any way to handle the Marcus situation legally without exposing the pack. We'll figure it out together, Cale promised. All of it, one step at a time. Together, Mira echoed, liking the sound of it more each time she said it. A howl echoed from the forest, Sienna, probably, signaling it was time for morning patrol. Cale sighed but stood, offering Mira his good hand. Duty calls. Then let's answer. She took his hand, letting him pull her to her feet. After all, I'm pack now. Might as well start acting like it. As they walked toward the tree line together, Mira felt the future opening before her, uncertain, challenging, but full of possibility. She was a wolf, a mate, a survivor becoming a warrior, and for the first time in her life, she was exactly who she was meant to be. 2 months later, autumn had painted the mountains in fire. Mira stood at the edge of the training grounds, watching younger pack members spar under Sienna's watchful eye. She'd come so far since that terrifying first shift. Her transformations were smoother now, faster, and she'd learned to embrace the wolf instead of fighting it. But some lessons were harder than others. You're holding back again, Sienna called out, pausing the session. I can see it in your stance. You're afraid of hurting someone. Because I might actually hurt someone, Mira protested. I'm still learning control. Control doesn't mean weakness. It means choosing when and how to use your strength. Sienna crossed her arms. You faced down a revenant with pure instinct. Now I need you to trust. You're training the same way. Mira glanced toward the tree line where Cale was meeting with Dominic and the other senior pack members. Even from here, she could feel him through the bond, his presence, a steady warmth at the back of her mind. In the past 2 months, that connection had only deepened, becoming as natural as breathing. Again, Sienna commanded, snapping her back to attention. And this time, commit to the strike. They circled each other, and Mira felt the familiar rush as her wolf rose to the surface. Not a full shift, just enough to sharpen her senses, to lend her supernatural strength and speed. She feinted left, then struck right, her blow connecting with Sienna's raised forearm with satisfying force. Better. Sienna grinned, her eyes flashing amber. Now don't stop. Keep the pressure. They moved through a rapid exchange, and Mira felt herself falling into the rhythm of it. Strike, block, pivot, counter. Her body knew what to do even when her mind tried to overthink. This was what Cale had meant when he said to trust the wolf. The session ended with both of them breathing hard but satisfied. As the younger pack members dispersed, Sienna threw an arm around Mira's shoulders. "You've come a long way, White Wolf. I'm impressed. High praise from someone who called my first attempt enthusiastic but suicidal. Well, you've upgraded to competent with occasional moments of recklessness. That's progress." Sienna's expression grew more serious. "How are you really doing? With everything?" Mira knew what she meant. The Marcus situation had been resolved a month ago, restraining order filed, her belongings retrieved with pack escort, legal paperwork ensuring he'd face consequences if he came near her again. He'd tried once, showing up at her old apartment building. The landlord had called the police, but Kale had gotten there first. Mira didn't know exactly what had been said during that encounter. Kyle refused to give details, and Marcus had left town 3 days later, permanently. "I'm okay," Mira said honestly. "Some days are harder than others. I still have nightmares sometimes, but they're getting less frequent." "And Kale? How's the mated life treating you?" A smile tugged at Mira's lips despite herself. "It's good. Really good. Though living together happened faster than I expected. Mate bonds tend to accelerate things." Sienna's tone was knowing. "But you seem happy, genuinely happy." "I am." And it was true. She'd moved into Kale's cabin 6 weeks ago, and despite initial fears about moving too fast, it had felt right. Natural, like pieces of a puzzle finally clicking into place. The meeting broke up, and Kale emerged from the trees, his eyes immediately finding hers across the clearing. Even after 2 months, that look, the one that said she was the most important thing in his world, still made her heart skip. He crossed to her in long strides, and Mira didn't hesitate before rising on her toes to kiss. Some of the younger pack members made exaggerated gagging noises, but Kale just smiled against her mouth. "How was training?" he asked when they separated. "Sienna only insulted me twice. That's a new record." "I heard that," Sienna called over her shoulder as she walked away. "And they were constructive criticisms." Kale chuckled, then his expression grew more serious. "Walk with me? There's something I want to show you." Curiosity piqued. Mira let him lead her into the forest, their fingers intertwined. They walked in comfortable silence until they reached a clearing she didn't recognize. A beautiful spot where wildflowers grew in abundance, and a small stream burbled over smooth stones. "I've been working on something," Kale said, his voice carrying a note of nervousness she rarely heard. "A project, and I wanted you to see it before it's finished, in case you want changes." "Changes to what?" He gestured toward the far side of the clearing, and Mira's breath caught. There, partially hidden by trees, was the framework of a house. Not a cabin, a real house, with large windows and a wraparound porch and enough space for a family. "Kale." She turned to him, overwhelmed. "What is this?" "A home. Our home, if you want it." His hand tightened on hers. "The cabin is mine was mine, but I want us to build something together. Something that's ours from the foundation up." Tears pricked her eyes. "You're building us a house." "I'm trying to. Dominic's been helping, and half the pack has offered construction expertise." He rubbed the back of his neck with his free hand, suddenly bashful. "I know it's presumptuous. We've only been together 2 months, and maybe you're not ready for this kind of commitment." Mira kissed him, pouring every ounce of love and gratitude and hope into it. When she pulled back, his eyes were wide with surprise and relief. "It's perfect," she said. "You're perfect. And yes, I want this. I want us. I want a future that we build together." The smile that broke across his face was brilliant. "Yeah? Yeah?" She turned back to the house frame, imagining what it would become. "Can we have a library? And a big kitchen? I've been wanting to learn to cook, and the cabin's kitchen is barely big enough for anything you want." Kale wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on top of her head. "We'll make it exactly what you need." They stood like that for a long moment, watching the sun filter through the trees and paint everything golden. Through the bond, Mira felt Kale's contentment, his love, his absolute certainty that this them was forever. "I talked to my mother yesterday," Mira said quietly. "Really talked, for the first time since I found out about everything." "How did it go?" "Hard," she cried. I cried. We're both still processing. Mira leaned back into his warmth. "But she wants to visit. To meet you. To see who I've become. I'd like that." Kale's voice was soft. Family is important, even when it's complicated. She asked if I was happy. Mira turned in his arms to face him. I told her I've never been happier in my life, that I found where I belong, found who I belong with. Cale's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with familiar tenderness. I love you, Mira Hayes. My mate, my partner, my home. I love you too, Cale Brennan. My protector, my equal, my everything. As they kissed in the clearing that would someday hold their home, Mira felt the last pieces of her broken past falling away. She wasn't running anymore, wasn't hiding, wasn't afraid. She was a wolf. She was loved. She was free. And somewhere deep in the forest, a white wolf howled in pure joy, the sound echoing off the mountains like a promise of all the tomorrows yet to come. 6 months later, the house was finished. Mira stood in the kitchen, their kitchen, watching through the window as Cale played with 3 pack pups in the yard. His laughter carried on the wind, and through the bond, she felt his happiness like sunshine. Life wasn't perfect. She still had days where the shadows of her past crept in. Still went to therapy. Still worked on trusting herself as much as she trusted Cale. But she was healing, growing, becoming. And when Cale looked up and caught her watching, when his whole face lit up with that smile reserved only for her, Mira knew with absolute certainty she'd run into the right darkness after all.